As a teacher, I got my first dose of the vaccine this morning. I just want to do a special shout out to Helen Chakesano and the Punahou School and the Human Resources. So I was able to do that. I also want to say that not all teachers have employer. A lot of them, teachers are self-employed. They pay taxes, estimated taxes. They have a general excise tax. Sometimes they pay rent to use a teaching space. But for those self-employed teachers, it's a little harder to be accepted to get a vaccine. So I'm going to make a couple calls maybe tomorrow to mayor's office, governor's office, state representative where my wife teaches, Moanalua Valley. So
excellent.
But I feel blessed, and hopefully more and more people will go through that phase.
We're happy for you.
Yeah.
And you look great.
Anyway, enough of me.
Iggy,
We can never get enough of you.
Yes. Iggy, could you please introduce our distinguished guests
Yes, let's
this evening?
do it the proper way. We're very, very honored and happy to welcome Anna Womack and Don Womack. I remember when, so Anna is a viola player, member of the Hawaii Symphony, and Don Womack, you are professor of composition at the University of Hawaii. When I came to Hawaii in 1997, I think I met Don first, but both of you helped me feel welcome in Hawaii and kind of show me the ropes and introduce me to the culture in Hawaii and the colleagues outside of the symphony. So we're very happy to have you here. So let me, can I ask you, we haven't had guests who have grown-up kids. We've had guests who have, toddlers or babies or young kids. We've had this pandemic, and it's of course affected all of us. But on a lighter perspective, I guess, what is it like to spend 11, 12 months with two grown-ups, two boys who, I don't know, about 17, 18 years old, and the other one a little older.
Keep going, 19 and 22.
19 and 22.
Yeah.
In your home for 12 months, all of four of you living 24 hours inside the home.
Yeah. So I have spent a lot of time at my office at UH during the pandemic. And I think that's been healthy for everybody because we, as you say, we are four adults living in a 1,500 square foot townhouse. So yeah, it's
so
I've
as
been fortunate
usual
to have an office that I can go to, my studio, where I can do my work. Yeah.
So as expected, the woman in the household does everything, Anna.
All the important stuff, yeah.
Yes, all the important stuff, yeah. Actually, I've been thankful that they've been home because we get along, actually, and it's, we're not lonely. We spend time with each other, and we eat dinner together just about every night. So I actually feel lucky that we've had a full house during this time.
Was it an adjustment, maybe spring, summer, fall, winter, or was it difficult at first, or was it...
Well, they've been with us a long time anyway.
The past 22 years.
Yes, we've known them for 22. We've lived with them for 22 years. So, I would say it wasn't a huge adjustment.
That said, our youngest, Max, has just last week gone to California. He's at Chapman University, and he really, really wanted to go, and he wore us down to the point where we finally agreed to let him go, and we're hoping he's okay with the pandemic.
I know both of them, and they're very talented in visual arts. Having two musicians, parents, where did that talent in visual arts came from?
Definitely not from me. I'm guessing it's from her.
The visual arts, I don't know where that came from. I think maybe from his school. He went to Waldorf school, and they emphasized the fine arts, and maybe that's where he got both of them. One's into animation and one's into painting. So I think the school was a big part of it.
I think so too.
Dave, sorry, go ahead, Anna.
I think they also know the work ethic that's required of being any sort of artist. It's a lot of time alone practicing or drawing or doing your own thing, and I think they learned that from him.
And from her.
And Dave, do you have any talent in terms of drawing and painting?
No talent, Iggy.
No, I'm just,
Thank you for
that
asking.
wasn't a sarcastic question. I was just an honest,
Yes.
curious question.
No, that's no. I am not very visually artistic. I've tried to get into photography in the past, but it's not gone
And
well.
speaking of question,
Yes, Iggy, this evening, and we're already getting some, and I want to get this one out of the way. Yes, we have another violist on the show, and this was Iggy's suggestion, not mine. So apparently, I've had some bias towards asking all the violists to be on the show. Having been a violist at one point. So, but that might influence our trivia question for the evening.
That's right. That's right.
And so this evening, to engage in conversation with us, you can text us at the number below. And we are happy to take those, ask questions of Donna, Anna, and Iggy, and of course myself. And we have a trivia question. Should we get that out of the way now, or do you want to build some suspense?
I think last week was maybe difficult, and so today we sort of slightly lowered the bar as Dave is gulping his wine. So are you ready to ask it, Dave?
Sure, I can ask the question. So this evening we have Ramey wine from our friends at Hasser Wine and a charcuterie plate from Terry at Hasser Wines. Thank you for your continued support. If you need a drink this week, head on over there and support our friends over here in Chinatown. But the question for the winner who is located on Oahu, so that we can deliver this to you, is name a composer who was also a violist. Any composer that was also a violist. Any.
And again, many thanks to Hasser for their bottle of wine, Claret. I think I always get confused with the name Claret. I think Claret in the old days referred to a wine from Bordeaux, the French region, kind of a dark rosé. But that's the term that the British use. But then it became sort of a generic term, Claret.
And they say claret, right? I thought so.
Thank you. Where was I? Hasser. They do wine tasting and curbside takeout lunch. So,
Yeah.
very good.
Nice.
Dave, I don't want to steal your line, but usually what Dave asks first is take us to the beginning. So we don't mean Book of Genesis, but Don, you're from Tennessee. Anna, you're from Georgia, and so we're very curious to know how you grew up and became musicians. But Anna, first, I think of Georgia. And
Was that your southern accent?
And I think of a TV show that ran for about 6 years, and it takes place in Georgia, and you have some humans, but you also have some characters that go like, and it's called the Walking Dead, right? So I think of
That took
Georgia.
place in Georgia?
Yes, yes,
Oh,
they're
I
kind of moving from Atlanta to different places.
I didn't know this.
Yes. So this is what I think when I think of Georgia.
I'm sorry.
And of course, not to steal another line that many other people say is, but recently Georgia has been in a lot of people's mind. But you're actually the root. You're kind of the whatever he says is the horse's mouth. If I were to go to Georgia, what would you tell me? You should go there, you should do this, or what are Georgians known for, and things like that.
Well, I haven't actually lived there for over 3 decades, but I would say they're beautiful state parks. So there's hiking and lakes and rivers and swamps to explore. There's also coastal towns on the beach. Beaches, beach towns. There are, if you're a Civil War buff, there are places to go to relive history. Food, there are, the Georgia peanuts and Georgia peaches, and I would say interesting town to visit would be Savannah, the old South. The people are very kind and open.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Every time you go there, do you feel like things change or that things are the same?
In some ways they're the same, and in some ways they've gotten a little bit more hippie and snappy. Yeah, like Atlanta's really changed, and it's a very hip town place now, big city. Depends on where you are.
Very good. And Don, I went to school in Indiana, and sometimes I would do gigs in Kentucky, whatever. But if I think of Tennessee, I don't know if Tennessee is the South or is it in the Midwest, or what would you call Tennessee? Or
South, it's definitely
South.
South. Yeah.
What was it like growing up there?
I didn't grow up anywhere else, so I don't have anywhere else to compare it to. The things that I love about it, and it's interesting, you said the same types of things. We're both outdoors type people, so I love the mountains. I love the hiking. I grew up in East Tennessee, and I spent a lot of time up in the mountains of that area. And when I go back, that's what I try to do. There are some beautiful hiking trails all through East Tennessee that I love to visit. It's gorgeous in the fall if you have a chance to go in the fall. The hiking is wonderful, or just from your car along the Blue Ridge Parkway in that area. It's a beautiful place. Appalachian Trail is great
That's
hiking.
right.
Yep.
We'll get to it later. You have a piece called Tennessee Crossroads. What are the different, in terms of folk music, what are the different styles that you can find in Tennessee? Like bluegrass, or
You're putting
is
me on the
that?
spot here? Yeah. Bluegrass, of course. Bluegrass is technically from Kentucky, but that area is of course, very much part of the origin of country music. In fact, I grew up about 20 miles from a place called Carter's Fold, which, if you're a country music historian, as a lot of people consider it the birthplace of country music. It's where June Carter, the Carter family, had basically a big barn that they would perform in at night, and we went there ourselves.
We went there, yeah.
About 25 years ago,
fun.
we went to.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I grew up right across the mountain from that.
And what is bluegrass? Is it?
Well, you're really putting me on the spot. I am not an expert in bluegrass at all. But
What kind of instruments would you find typically?
Fiddle, violin, but played in a fiddle style with lots of open strings and sliding into notes. Banjo, of course, guitar, those types of instruments, yeah.
And so, Anna, how did you learn to play the viola early on?
Well, my mother was a piano teacher, so she started me on piano, and then she wanted my sister and me to learn violin. An interesting thing was our violin teacher was actually her piano teacher when she was growing up, Mrs. Hogue. So we would go to her house every Monday and have our lessons, and yeah. But the sad part was in Rome, Georgia, where I grew up, there might have been 5 or 6 string players, 5, students like me growing up playing violin. And so there were no orchestras in the schools. And I remember one Christmas, we went to the mall and played Christmas carols. And it was 2 older people and my sister and me. So, it's not like the thriving string community here in Honolulu.
Was there competition between you and your sister, or did you get along, or?
We got along fine, yeah.
Her sister's mainly a singer, so that.
And she was a better pianist, and I was a better violinist than her, so it evened out.
So, Iggy kind of stole my question, taking us back to the beginning here a little bit, but I want to unpack this a little bit. So Anna, you're a violist with the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra. You've been in the symphony here for
26 years.
Yeah.
26 years, and you are on the faculty of UH as a composition professor, correct?
Correct.
But I suspect that you two maybe came here together.
Yes.
That's right. We met
Yeah,
in college.
We'd already been married 5 years. I mean,
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been married. It's coming up on 32 years. Good Lord.
Yeah.
And what opportunity was it that brought you to Hawaii? Was it the symphony? Was it UH?
It was a UH gig, yeah.
Okay.
So we feel so lucky that we both get to do what we want to do here. Awesome.
Yeah, we both have jobs doing what we love in an incredible place. We could not feel more blessed.
Yeah.
So I want to ask about being a composition teacher, composition professor. I have this idea in my mind that, someone comes in with a score that's all scribbled on, and you take it and
No.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And you've cut the legs off on the piano, and you're there, and you're playing it
stole
together.
it.
Yes. What is that? Take us through teaching composition. How do you teach composition?
It's nothing like that, of course. It's a difficult thing to teach. So what I like to say is that you can teach the craft of composition, but you can't teach the art of composition. That's something that they has to come from inside. It has to come from developed through their own experience. And my approach to teaching is to help them, whatever style they're writing in, help them to do it the best that they can, basically. And that involves a lot of taking apart what they've written and saying, what if we tried this instead? This might work better. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? A lot of, hey, do you know this piece by Bartók? Hey, do you know such and such a piece? Go listen to this because this composer did something similar to what you're trying to do, and this is how they solved the problem. So it's really sort of guiding them to find the answers on their own.
So you said a certain style of composition. I'm going to ask perhaps a dangerous question. I'm going to ask it of Anna. What's Don's style of composition?
It's the Womack style. That's
The
a very
Womack
easy question to answer.
What is that? Define it. If I had never listened to your works, how would you define it?
You asking me to define it?
Oh.
Okay.
Yes, I'm interested in this answer too.
I say it's very rhythmically driven, and it's very proportioned for the entirety of the piece, meaning he wants to take you on a journey. You get there and then you go away. So I think he's very deliberate about how long sections are, and they get you to this point. I think that's right. But I think the big thing is rhythm. I think rhythm.
So Anna, when Don is drafting his pieces, do you get to sometimes listen to them, like previews, and what is the working relationship between a viola wife and the composer husband? Is it? Do you feel like you can say what you want, or do you have to be sensitive?
He's pretty tough. So I feel
Tough,
like
you
I
mean
can.
as in tough skin?
Yeah. So I feel like I can say things, but I think the most important, when he does ask me to listen to something or ask me my opinion about something, it's actually for him listening to it again with a different set of ears. And I think when he asks me to listen to it, he's listening to it with a different set of ears. And sometimes just us talking about it, he'll come up with a suggestion or come up with an answer that he's looking for on his own.
So Don, are you a yes, ma'am, or are you a no, ma'am, but then later you say yes? Because like, just FYI, for me, the first answer is to my wife is always no. Like, the Korean, French way, no, 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 no. But then later it kind of goes back to, or it goes to yes. Anyway, sorry, Don.
Well, I think when I ask her to listen, or I ask for feedback or help with this, I think she tends to get a little mad at me because I don't take the answer sometimes. But she's absolutely right. What I really need is just someone to bounce ideas off of. So it's really, really valuable to have that. And even if I don't do directly what she says, it's still influencing the decisions that I make. So your input is definitely taken.
Oh, great.
So now that I've heard Anna's perspective of your music, can you describe your music?
I think she did a pretty good job of
okay.
it. Definitely she mentioned the rhythmic element, which is very important, and the dramatic arch of it, which is very important.
That's the word I couldn't think of.
Yeah. But I would say there's also a lyrical side. And when I want to be, I can be lyrical. And one very important thing about my music that many people may not know, I do a lot of work with East Asian instruments. So I write a lot for Japanese, Korean, and sometimes Chinese instruments as well, in combination with Western instruments. So that's a major influence on my work.
And I have to say that I mean, he is my husband, and I know I'm supposed to like him and stuff, but I have to say that I am impressed with how disciplined he is in his work, and also how hard he works to learn those Asian instruments. I mean, you don't perform on them, but you understand how they work, and that always impressed me, by the way.
Where does that come from? Your interest outside of traditional Western music?
It comes from here, really. If you had asked me 30 years ago if I was going to be, writing for Asian instruments, what are you talking about? Being here, being immersed in this very diverse cultural melting pot, with all these wonderful cultures, sparked my interest. And there's a long history of involvement with East Asian music in particular at the University of Hawaii through the ethnomusicology program, and composers who preceded me at UH. And so I've, along with my colleagues, Tom Osborne and Takuma Ito, we have built on that history to build up the program. So it really comes from Hawaii. That's what got me into it.
That's great.
And sorry, go
No,
ahead.
please, Iggy.
No, and the current faculty, you've really kind of branched into that genre of course, Polynesian. Because I remember when I first came in, it was Takeo Kudo and Neil Mackay, and then you came in, and then so I feel like in my mind there's the pre-dawn and there's a post-dawn, and how the influences of Asian instruments kind of played a major part in your career.
Definitely. And we've been very, very fortunate to have developed opportunities to collaborate with many of the top performers of Japanese and Korean instruments. These are world-class musicians, and we've just been really, really fortunate to develop these long-term relationships so that I'm writing pieces for these great performers.
So I want to go back even further to the beginning, because I'm seeing a few questions along this line. Did you just wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a composer? Were you an instrumentalist at some point? What was your instrument?
Yeah, I was a bass player, but as I like to say, I've been on parole for many years now. I came from a musical family. My mother was a musician. My older sister is a musician, so I guess it's in my blood, you could say. But I always I was more interested in creating and writing something than in performing. I'm kind of shy. I didn't really enjoy being on stage in the performing role. I'm much better suited to just sitting alone in my studio for hours on end, creating something.
Is there a viola concerto?
There is.
There
is?
Yeah.
Excellent.
But it was not written for her. It was commissioned by an orchestra in North Carolina for another violist. Ralph Ferris was the violist.
Oh, yeah.
Good violist.
Yeah.
And it's actually, since you asked about bluegrass, again, I'm not an expert, but this piece is based on bluegrass. So it uses a lot of bluegrass elements to it, called Blue Ridge Seasons.
So you mentioned that you came together to Hawaii, but actually both of you and Dave have something in common in that you all lived maybe not at the same time, or maybe yes, in Chicago. Tell us about how you got to Chicago. Anna first.
Well, after we graduated from Furman University in South Carolina, where we met, Dawn started going to graduate school at Northwestern, and I got a job working at the Music Center of
course, yeah.
in an office, and we moved to Evanston, which is outside of Chicago, so he could start Northwestern. And even though I wasn't going to school or graduate school at that time, I took lessons from the viola professor at Northwestern, Peter Slowick, who is also your
Who I studied with as well, but at Oberlin.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
So we are grandchildren or children of Peter Slowick, I guess.
Children of yes.
We're siblings in the viola way, I guess.
Who looks younger and younger every time I see him.
I know, he does.
Just complete the opposite of the rest of us.
He's amazing, yeah.
Yes, and energy level goes up every time.
We're talking about our teacher.
Yeah.
So you didn't know each other, you didn't know Dave while you were in Chicago, but you have
He was
common
probably
friends?
a young child.
He's a youngster.
We have common friends.
We have
though.
common friends,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
And in fact, Don, you actually taught one of the members of the Hawaii Symphony.
That's right. Yeah, Mark Butin, who
Another viola player!
the principal violist. I was teaching ear training when I was in graduate school. I was a graduate assistant teaching ear training, and Mark was one of my students.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we love to unpack these things for our audience because this is just common language to us, ear training. But could you please tell our audience what the heck ear training is, or aural skills?
Or aural thrills,
yes.
as we like to call it.
Yes.
Yeah, I wish I knew how to answer that question. that is basically, I guess the best way to explain it is to teach how to translate sound into notation and translate notation into sound. So we do a lot of you see a melody and we sight sing the melody, or we play a melody and you write down the melody, or we play a Bach chorale and you write all four voices with the chord progression, that kind of thing. That's ear training.
Is that, sorry, in France we have solfège? Is
We
that
use-
similar?
It's similar, yeah. So we use solfège, actually.
But what is the difference between solfège
We use
and...
the American version of solfège.
And what is the American version of solfège?
Solfège. Je m'excuse.
Claret. Yeah.
It's basically the difference is for you, do means C. Right?
As
So
it
for you,
should.
do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, do. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do.
T.
Yeah,
C.
but we also move it. So the
Movable do.
movable do.
That's
So
crazy.
the tonal center becomes do. It makes so much more sense than the French version. You get nothing.
So here's your do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, do, quand moi, sol, la, do. But then you can do, re, mi, so then mi, you
can make
mi,
that-
do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si. No, I can't do it. For me, a do is a do.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
I like numbers myself.
Un, deux, trois, quatre, cinq.
So this is something that in music school we spend a lot of time with, and not when I was at Oberlin, but during my master's I had an aural skills, as they call it at Juilliard. Dr. Marie Cox, Dr. Cox, who studied with Boulanger, and that was the most useful class I have had in all of music school because it taught me how to improvise. It taught me how to listen to music. It taught me how to do what Iggy and Jake were talking about a few weeks ago, where Jake played something for Iggy and Iggy sat down and wrote it out note for note after listening to it once. That's the training that really prepares you for, and it's incredibly useful.
Yeah, it's a fundamental skill for musicians, definitely. That's why it is one of the core courses. If you go to school anywhere and major in music, you take 2 years of ear training.
I wish we could do like a quiz and do fixed do versus movable do to hear what our audience is most interested in.
I had never
Next week.
heard of movable do until I came to the U.S. Dave mentioned Fontainebleau and Nadia Boulanger. You actually spent some time in Fontainebleau.
I did. I went to Fontainebleau one summer, in 1988.
Among other travels, and I was very lucky because you had me and Tom join you guys, but the two of you spent a whole year in Japan. Was that what grant was that?
Fulbright.
Fulbright. So the question, Anna, to you is, do you feel like you sometimes sacrifice yourself to follow Dawn around? Because you had two young kids, I remember. I mean, the two grown-ups that we talked earlier, they were quite young at the time. I remember you had little Max practicing his Suzuki magazine. Magazine one. Suzuki magazine is like one. Book one of Suzuki. And did you move? I'm sure you were fully supportive, but was part of you like, I have to follow Dawn and be supportive?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. But every time I've done that, it's been awesome. So I feel lucky, and he's taken our family on lots of adventures, and we hope that we may go on another one soon. We'll see. And it's been worth it, and we're a team. You know, he's made sacrifices for me too in other ways. So,
what was some of the nice memories that you remember from your year in Japan?
Well, you mentioned the Suzuki thing. Both my boys, one plays violin, and one plays cello. So we found teachers for them, Suzuki teachers for them in Japan, and it was awesome going to the lessons every week. And they would do the group recitals and group classes with their Japanese teachers and the other students. Sundays would be our family day, and we would go to museums and parks, travel all around and see things, temples. I met lots of other international families there through the boys' school, the international school. And I tell you, one of the best memories, though, was when you and Chris and our friends Greg and Robert and Kumi and Paul all coalesced in Japan at one time, and Iggy played a piece of Dawn's at this recital, and it was fabulous to have some friends there, and we would go out to eat and share the wonders of Japan together. It was awesome.
Yeah, and Paul, I think it was Kumi's 50th birthday?
50th birthday, I think.
Yeah,
so.
and so Paul had commissioned me to compose a piece.
And I think Paul and Kumi's tuning, so shout out to them.
Hey.
All the way in Vancouver.
Hey. So that was it was a total surprise. Kumi had no idea, and so we unveiled this piece, and Iggy performed it along with Tom Rosenkrantz was there, right?
He was, yes, absolutely.
And I remember Kumi just being in tears. She was so overtaken with it.
Anna, you just talked about the Suzuki program. Are you a Suzuki teacher?
I am, yes, I use the Suzuki method when I teach, yeah. And I tell you, I learned so much from going to my son's lessons.
So I'm a Suzuki kid as well.
Oh.
Can you tell us all what the Suzuki method is? Because it actually correlates to ear training, I think.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So the Suzuki method is Dr. Suzuki discovered that it's based on the mother tongue method, which means that all children learn to speak the language that they hear all the time. So he figured out that if you play music to a young child over and over again, they will pick it up and repeat it just like they repeat words that they learn talking with their family. So the one of the fundamentals of the Suzuki method is constant listening. So in the background, a child is listening to the Suzuki pieces over and over again. And so they learn they learn to hold their instrument and to produce the sounds without ever reading music, because the music is all in their head and their heart. And so it's easier to produce the music when it's inside you. And it's a fabulous method.
That's a really great description of that. As someone who spent 18 years of their life in that, I'm not sure I could have described it as well. And there's also some roots to Hawaii here with the Suzuki Method and Dr. Suzuki and kind of bringing this to the mainland back when it was first coming to the U.S., which is really quite interesting.
Dave, can I ask you? So since you're a Suzuki kid and so is Anna, how do you reconciliate or work both the Suzuki method, where you absorb a lot, you immerse yourself in music, but at the same time what Don was talking about, which is the important ear training? Because sometimes you can have someone who's too stuck into reading, but they don't know how to communicate the music, or it doesn't make sense yet. And on the other side of the token, sometimes you have students who can play by ear very well, but at some point they are a little stuck because they can't read music. How did that? How did you do?
That was me. I was a slow reader.
I don't think so.
No, I just learned to do everything by ear, and I was very slow to learn to read music because of that. And I started the Suzuki Method when I was 2.
Wow.
And that's part of the idea behind the Suzuki Method, is that you can start at a very young age because you don't need to, be potty trained or speak. And the kids don't have any choice either, so it's better you start them young.
Right.
But I think that there's aspects of that. Like I remember, when I would go to sleep at night, it's like the Suzuki Book 1 tape would go in, and you'd fall asleep to that, and that may have ruined me to this day, not being able to fall asleep without something, without Twinkle playing in the background. But it really wasn't until really doing ear training and really that came full circle, that I was able to hear something, understand harmonically what it meant, and then be able to translate that to the page. So
Did you play piano too, or?
I did, yeah.
But and that helps,
It
right?
does, yeah. Not as
I think the students who start an orchestra program early too, then they have to learn to read, and I think that's a great incentive. So I love that combination of an early Suzuki student and then get them in the orchestra programs right away. Yeah. See, I was just the opposite. I learned the traditional method, and so I learned to read right off the bat, and I felt like my ear suffered. That it was I have to work really hard to play by ear, but so it's a trade-off either way, I guess. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Don, we were talking about immersion and absorbing music, and we were talking about, in your case, how you immerse yourself in Eastern culture, I guess. I mean, quote-unquote Eastern culture, but if I'm looking at your path, growing up in Tennessee and writing music that has bluegrass influence, and then you move on to Chicago and then Hawaii, and so everywhere you've been influenced by the local culture. Do you feel that your mind is very flexible and that you absorb, that your mind is very malleable in compared to maybe other composers who, wherever they are, they don't really use the local language?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. As an artist, of course, I'm always looking for ideas. Ideas are hard to come by, so I'm open to anything that can give me an idea. And I think that, wherever I am, I'm looking to absorb ideas and so forth, but still at the core, my music is still me. So it doesn't matter where I am or what the influences are. I think it's still going to come out me.
And honestly, I mean, you write so much for what do you call it? Not the cross-cultural.
Intercultural.
Intercultural, because you have so many commissions, and sometimes it's very hard for you to kind of fit in a composition that's just for traditional Western instrument because you have so many commissions.
Yeah, well, I'm in a very fortunate position to work only on commission now. So for many years now, it's only when I get a commission, and these days most are coming from Korea. So I've been writing a lot of pieces.
And your Korean is probably much better than mine.
I doubt it. I doubt it.
Can I ask about the commission? So an orchestra, an individual, a chamber music group, they reach out to you and say, we'd like a piece. What happens next? Can you describe that process for our audience? Not the financial side of things, of course, but if we have supporters out there who would, text us. But no, from the practical side of things, what's that like? What's the timeline like? Can you have a symphony for us next Friday?
It's funny you ask that because I have just finished a piece for the National Orchestra of Korea. I mean, literally today I finished this piece. And this story goes in the don't try this at home category because they contacted me literally 2 months ago. That is an incredibly short period of time. Normally, like a year is a short period of time for an orchestra piece. You want like 2 years notice for this thing. They contacted me like December 15th, I think it was, and said, can you write us a piece for an April 7th concert? We need it February 15th. And of course I said yes, because I don't know how to say no. So I wrote this, Anna can attest, I've been in my studio holed up 10, 12 hours a day, literally every day since.
Can I tell them what your other motivation is?
Sure.
To finish? Can I say it?
Sure.
He refused to get a haircut till he finished it. So.
And this is the result.
Well, had we known, we could have prepared for a tuning up haircut on air.
On air.
Did you feel like Samson, where all your compositional inspiration, strength?
The notes are gone when the hair is short.
That's great. Okay, I have to ask some viola questions, Iggy. I'm sorry. You knew it was coming. Yeah. Okay,
they're for Don, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Don, tell me about the viola section here.
The answer is don't do it.
Don't try this at home.
Don't try this. Yeah, we try. Yeah, absolutely. You've been in the section for 20 some odd years. I find that hard to believe, but Mark was on the show, and you're fearless leader and all those sorts of. What's life like in the viola section?
It is fun. We all get along. We support each other, and Mark is a great section leader. He cares about us. He's vocal, so he'll tell us what he's thinking, and we need to know what he's thinking. And we have so much fun in our section. I just love it. And I don't know if you can tell, like during rehearsal, sometimes we laugh a lot, and so we try to keep it under wraps when we need to. But
of course, yeah, absolutely. Iggy hates this question. Do you have a favorite viola joke, or are you against viola jokes?
No,
should this be a question for Don?
I have the one you like is kind of long, but I have a short one.
Okay.
I have a favorite. Why do violists drive around with their instrument on the dashboard?
I'm afraid to give my answer.
Yes. Okay, so we can park in a handicapped spot.
Oh.
Is that bad?
I was gonna go with always lost GPS. Don, yes?
Sorry.
Yeah,
no.
Iggy's
I was gonna change the subject completely.
Please.
Well, no, actually, it's not completely change the subject. But do we have any good answers for our trivia question?
We do. Thank you, Iggy. And I'm sort of like picking one of my favorites here because we had some really good ones. But the first answer that came in was a correct answer, and we're going to go with this. And that's from our friend Mari. And her answer was Kenji Bunch, which is an awesome answer. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Do you know Kenji Bunch?
Yeah.
Personally?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been here. I think he wrote something for the On Trio, who was was here years and years and years ago. I know he's written many things, but I think that was the last time he was in town.
Yes. So, Mari, we have a bottle of wine coming your way.
Yay, Mari.
Yeah, absolutely. Great answer. Some of the other ones, though, because there is a long list. Mozart, Hindemith from Helen, Paganini, violinist and violist from
That's
Andrea
right.
and Bob. And I'm really hoping. I like this one. This was a winner. Don Womack, you must play the viola. From Kathy. Yes, that was another good one. And Dvorak, another
Yeah,
correct
that's right.
answer. Yeah, absolutely. A lot of great ones. And we've got a couple of Team Movable Does that have written in as well
Yes.
this evening.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I thought we have a composer here, but as you know, every week we talk about some of our favorite pieces that are somewhat not as well known as top 40 pieces, and so we talked about the Japan trip. But why don't we start? Because we were talking a lot about the viola players and viola composers. Maybe Anna, do you have a off the beaten path piece, or is that a general?
Mine is a
favorite?
general comment. Anything that features a viola soloist in the symphonic literature is off the beaten path, I think.
And yeah, and truthfully, it is somewhat misrepresented,
Right.
underrepresented compared to the big piano
Yeah.
and violin concerto.
I'm going to turn this around. Iggy, what is your favorite piece that features the viola?
Well, you have composers,
Name one.
Berlioz, but Berlioz actually grew up in La Côte Saint-André, I think, not very far from where I grew up. In fact, I went to a B&B once, and that B&B featured lavatory, a sink, a bathroom sink that was owned by Hector Berlioz. And it was a little
Second
place.
time on the show, we've heard about the thing.
Fond memories of that little sink. Anyway, but if you ask, and of course, there's definitely the Bartók Viola Concerto is just a masterpiece that is not performed very often. Just like the Violin Concerto is not performed that very often because people think it's too modern. But modern. What is modern now? We're in 2021, and Don Bartók is from what era?
Yeah, not ours.
Yes. So, but anyway,
Question?
yes, I did want to talk about a piece I like very much, and the piece I like very much is called Waterfalls. It's for piano. It has 3 little movements, and the composer is Don Womack. I shouldn't say I have a favorite movement, but really the middle movement, which is called, Don, what is the middle movement called?
A suspended liquid veil.
Suspended liquid. It's just very deeply moving. I remember when Tom was rehearsing it and recording it, just falling in love with it. So the piece is called Waterfalls. The movement's called Suspended Liquid Veil. And what I enjoyed about this piece is that Tom played it his own way, and I've heard other pianists playing their own way, and it didn't matter what interpretation I heard. It was always very, very poetic, very whimsical, and deeply moving. So that's my favorite piece. And it's how can people listen to it?
That piece is on an album called Walk Across the Surface of the Sun, which you can find online at any place that has music available for download, or you can get a physical CD of it if you want. I'm sure it's on Spotify and Amazon and Apple and all those places.
Dave, what about
I promise I'm not sucking up to the guests with this one, or the star of the show, Iggy. But I, this week, in preparing for this, was listening to some of Don's work, and I came across the recording that Iggy did of An Infinite Moment, a piece for violin and piano. Just a stunning piece that I listened to a couple of times this week, and highly recommend a listen to that as well. Is that on the same?
It is on the
same.
on
it
that
was
same
recorded
CD.
in Japan, wasn't it?
How
It
fortunate.
was
How
recorded in
fortunate.
Japan, yeah, and that was in fact the piece that Paul commissioned for Kumi.
That's right.
Yeah.
I remember on that CD you had a spectacular koto player, Kimura-san, and she's one of the foremost player of koto, and it just and we played Strung Out, another piece by you, and it was quite a treat an honor to work with her. Did you have a favorite piece of yours, or for us? I mean, it doesn't have to be by yourself.
Well, I appreciate you plugging me. Thank you very much. But I'm going to take the opportunity to be even more shameless and plug myself. My most recent album, which is called Intertwined, and the title piece on that is a piece for viola and kayagum, which is the Korean version of, many of you may know, koto, the Japanese, looks like a harp on the ground. So viola, kayagum, and jangu, which is a Korean drum. And I am the jangu player on that piece. So
Wow.
Anna and I both played on that piece.
Looking forward
Intertwined.
to it.
It's fun, yeah.
I wanted to ask you, our own little word. So like Anna, you have the Hawaii Symphony, and Dawn, you have the UH. And do you sometimes come back home after a long day of work and talk about not the politics, but how things are working in my world, in my job, and then the other spouse go, well, this is how it goes in my job, and I have so many meetings and committees and whatever and blah blah blah. Do you ever share work stories, or once you're at home, you just take care of the kids and try to kind of
We don't wait till the evening. We get up in the morning and talk about
Oh, we gripe all the time. Yeah.
But that's what, your partner's for. So you unload and discuss, and then you feel better for the rest of the day and people you work with. So,
Dave, I'm sure, you have pressure, you have long hours, you have to deal with everyone on the spectrum, but finally at the end of the day, I don't know what time your day ends, but are you able to unwind, or?
Yeah, it's a lot of walks with the dog, and I inherited this from my father, and my wife calls it the Moss Death March, because we just go out and I will walk, and walks are long, and they're supposed to be long, and that's kind of how I clear my mind and talk through the day with my wife. But yes, we don't wear heels anymore because of the Moss Death March, because you never know how long they're going to last.
that's good.
Yes.
So you're able to kind of unwind, refresh?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So how about you and Chris?
So the truth is, I prefer not to talk work when I get home, just because it's like a dominoes effect, I guess, or you don't want to open a can of worms. And she's asking you, how was your day? How was working with this person? And sometimes I do give a sort of a boring, plain answer, and I just say it was fine. And sometimes we have, difficulties, not difficulties, but challenging things to work with. And I don't know, outside of tuning up, I usually keep my mouth shut. Just say, as soon as the show is over, from Tuesday evening until the next Tuesday, I save my energy for this show. So
We're grateful.
Wow.
Yeah.
yes, but hey, on another question, I wanted to ask you that. So you mentioned viola joke, and it's easy, and you hear viola jokes all the time about viola players. And then 20th and 21st century composers, people go like. Sometimes they go like, oh, does your music go like, oh, goo, goo, gee? And so it's just borderline insulting. Do you have to have tough skin to kind of absorb all those viola jokes that can be funny, but after a while, it's a lot to hear, or being a composer and not to be respected accordingly? I mean, I know we're all making fun sometimes, and it's all in good spirits, but sometimes do you feel like you being very sensitive because that's sometimes all you hear from others? Anna first.
I guess it doesn't bother me. You know, I own it in a way, and kind of it's motivation to prove people wrong. That I can not stay lost in a symphonic, rehearsal. I do know where we are, and I can make a nice sound on the viola. So, yeah, and there's some people you're never going to change their mind. So why bother? Just and I do the best. Make me the best that I am. So yeah, it doesn't bother me, I don't think.
And I guess, Donnie, it's a little bit like I love modern art at the museum, and I would much rather look at modern art than the great Rembrandt or Vermeer. That's where I feel more affinity. But I guess sometimes listeners of classical music, they would rather hear Mozart or Beethoven. But what's your point on trying to tell them that you're equally worthy to hear?
Well,
nutritionally.
I mean,
people of your generation.
You just compared me to Mozart and Beethoven. How can I possibly answer that question? I think the music of previous eras is very important, of course, and a lot of it is just gorgeous, beautiful music, and it should be performed still. But I think it's important to understand that you have to. Music is a living art. And if you only perform works of the past, it becomes a museum. It ossifies. It becomes uninteresting. So I think that it's important for audiences to understand that it may be difficult to get into new music. That is nothing new. That has always been the case. At any historical period, Beethoven, the audiences of his time didn't get you listen to a piece like Grosse Fuge, some of his late works, he was, they must have thought he was nuts. What is this stuff, right? So you've got to realize that the stuff that we think of as, foundational repertoire of the Western canon, a lot of that was not well received in its time. Very much like a lot of music today. Who knows what is going to, emerge as the lasting music that's being written today? But it's very likely that it is not necessarily being understood in the way that it will be 50, 100, 200 years from now. So it's important to understand that as audiences, we have to, engage with new music in order to create an atmosphere that will bring about the repertoire that will last into the future.
This is a wonderful jumping off point for the easiest question I'm going to ask all night. To you both, and in no particular order, what does the future of classical music look like? What does the future of the Hawaii Symphony Orchestra look like here for our community? What's your take on that, where we are right now with what we've been through for a very challenging 11 months? Maybe a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel with vaccines and a return to some sort of normalcy, but where do we go from here?
Well, every great city has a great orchestra, and this orchestra has survived a lot, and I know we're going to come back and we're going to have people in the seats, and music is just too vital to everyone. We can't do without it, and so I know we're going to emerge, and it's going to be wonderful.
Yeah, I think that it's really important for the pandemic. Of course, has really exacerbated trends, but the trend of losing audiences is something that's been going on for a long time, and I think it's really important that we do our best to educate people as to the value of live music, because. It's just not the same experience to hear a recording of a piece as it is to be in a concert hall, sitting feet away from 75 people who are working together on this incredibly complex, intricate work of art to bring it to life and to feel the vibrations of the sound. These are things that you just can't get on a recording. Recordings are great things for disseminating music widely, but to really experience it deeply, I think you have to have live music. That it's an experience that can't be matched in any other way.
Well, and I think it's those times when we've experienced that with people that tie our lives together. And, I just want to say hello to Greg and Robert, and actually talking about visiting you in Japan and again, how all these things are tied together in the community that we've built around music and around the symphony and around our community here, and how, as you said, vital it is as we emerge from this that be a part of our daily life again. And thank you. Thank you both for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Iggy, it's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure, Dave.
Next week will be something
New?
truly special. Another set of special guests, I understand.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned. I want to thank you all, of course, for joining us this evening and continuing to create community with us. We're getting a lot of questions. What's going to happen in February, March, April, May? We're playing out the scenarios right now, and I'm excited with where we're headed at the moment. And we can't do it without your support, and we're grateful to have you along with us. And we'll go from there. Iggy, any final words?
Just thankful to be here. Thankful for all of you to listen to us and viewing us. And I hope you appreciate all our guests every week, because they're wonderful to have and wonderful to hear their stories.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us
Yes, thank
and
you for inviting
including
us.
us in this project. It was fun. Yeah.
Well, thank you. We look forward to seeing you on stage and hearing some of your next compositions. So thank you again, and we'll see you next week here at 7:30 p.m. for Tuning Up with Iggy and Dave. Thank you again for your support.